Hello and welcome to the TT Podcast. This is the podcast where we talk to one person from the world of the TT racers to discuss their lives, their journeys, their ambitions and their relationship with the greatest motorsporting event in the world. I'm Chris Pritchard and with me, Steve Plater. You alright?
Good, Chris, you?
I'm alright, yeah, feeling good. Sun shining, not that anybody can see it.
We can't.
No, we can't. We're in a dark studio. Could be sunny out there. Who knows?
On the Isle of Man.
Yeah. So, by the way, so if you hear any strange noises, it's because we're not in the usual soundproof studio. I guess today, it's fair to say it, an absolute legend of the TT.
Yeah, without doubt. You know, a guy that has always been around in my eyes from competing and then after racing, but great character, has been there, done it all, and won it all.
Do you think we'll get some juicy gossip out of him?
Oh, I hope so. Might take a pint or two to get that, though.
Let's get into it. Today's guest was making his TT debut only a few months after I was brought into this world. 21 years later, he's still doing it. I'm joking, 38 years later. Steve, you didn't even pick up on that. That's because he lies about his age as well, isn't it? Anyway, 136 starts, 103 finishes with 10 wins, 29 podiums spanning 5 decades. And this is my favourite fact. There's been 35 years between your first podium and your last podium. That's some going, isn't it?
Not bad.
Unbelievable.
Not bad for a Welshman.
I know. You name it, he's ridden it around here, and his success away from the TT speaks for itself as well. 8 wins at the Northwest 200, 18 wins at the Ulster GP, and he is the most successful rider of all time around the Southern 100 with 32 wins. And we mentioned it briefly before we started the podcast. That's pretty special to you, isn't it?
Yeah, it is really. Joey Dunlop loved the Southern 100, and to beat one more than him, then it's some sort of accolade, And it was the first road race I ever did. So for me, going to the Southern, I got taken there by a tuner, great guy and sponsor called Ray Cowles. I went there and rode around there and I just loved the place, So for me, that was the benchmark of road racing.
Yeah, there's not many people that have one-upped Joey Dunlop, is there?
God, flipping ain't there.
Unbelievable. Right, we always start with the same question. I don't know whether to change it a little bit because, you're now a team manager and you're obviously watching the boys set off. But back in the day, and you still do it now, so you might get the same feeling, but back in the day, the height of your career, you're rolling through no man's land, you get grabbed on the shoulder, you're waiting for that flag to drop, get that tap on that shoulder and set off down Glencrutchery Road. What's going through your head? How are you feeling?
I don't know. I honestly, I don't really get that nervous. I get apprehensive, and I'm thinking, I think I just fill my head full of how the bike's going to react, what changes we've made. I'm thinking how that's going to react and how it's going to affect everything. I don't really feel nervous towards, the fact that most people would think about coming off or whatever. I try to eradicate that from everywhere. Obviously, the dangers, but you just try and concentrate on how the bike's going to react when you go down Bray Hill, because it's sort of getting light because you're accelerating, the front end's light. You're thinking, how's that going to, everything, every little bit. You're thinking, but don't actually get that nervous about it. I don't know why.
Quite a methodical thinking person.
Yeah, I must be. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I am really. I think things through a lot.
Was that right from the start though? Because again, first time you ever go down there, you're diving off into the unknown, aren't you?
Yeah, I think I've always been fairly forward thinking or whatever. Not so much the rest of my life, but. but
I was just going to start arguing there.
But yeah, no. I think I am really. I do think things through. I try and get things right. Although I'm not the most organised person in life, but in racing, I hate people who just turn up and just say, "Oh, I was unlucky." That bike. No, it wasn't prepared. If you, I was unlucky. I broke my leg or whatever. It can happen, of course. But, you just jump on any old thing, you're going to get hurt. You have to, so try and eradicate those problems, and then the percentage of doing things right, and getting a good result, or, being safe is better. But, so the question with, I don't really get that nervous about going on braille, but I'm not saying it's not no nerves, but it depends on the machine at the time. You know, sometimes this is going to be a handful. I'm going to have to hang on to this, and I'm really little. So but that's a different thing, you know. But when you know you've got things covered, and you've done your best, you think, right, and you know when you're on your A game as well, when you're right up there, and you know that you're one of the ones to beat, you think, right, just that concentration bit. Now the last bit is me, and in that bit, you know, that's
now. Obviously, the TT's changed massively over the years, you know, and coming through the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, it's many, many years. You've been rolling, you know, from kind of the start position into no man's land and away, but you're a Welshman.
Yep.
You like a drink.
Yep.
Back in the old days, when everybody kind of morning practice and of course the way things went on, was you always clear-headed, rolling into
Actually,
no man's land?
I know this is hard to believe that anybody who knows me, but I never drunk. You know, I never ever need drink the night before. It was like you were up at 4 o'clock in the morning, ready for going off the line at 5:15. So you know, and riding 2-strokes. There was no way you'd be drinking. No, you have to have a clear head. You know, that's honestly. I never drunk, and I don't know if I'm racing.
Do you think that was the case for everybody though back in the day?
I was just going to ask that. You know, back
I don't think so. I think there were a few.
Even with
they rolled
Joey.
out of the
They
rolled out of the pub straight onto the start line for morning warm-up.
I've heard stories about that, but I'm not saying he did that. I don't know, but I've heard stories that Joey did that, and back in the day, that was sort of the life, everyday life. You know, people drinking and driving was a little bit of what people sort of did a bit. You know, not.
Yeah. It was more the norm.
Not that it was right. I'm just saying that's what people did. It was more the norm in those days. Whereas these days it's.
You've seen some massive changes, you know, at the Isle of Man TT races over the years since starting, you know, back in the early 80s. All for the good. No, you know, obviously with things like no morning practice, no wet races, various different things, you know, even setting off in practice on your own, and now morning warm up, and there's so many differences.
Yeah, I don't think it's all for the good. No, I like morning practices, but I can understand it from the organisers and the marshals stood out there from 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
You know,
what was it about it that you liked?
It was that freshness and the especially riding 2-strokes then. And anybody knows who runs a 2-stroke, they run so much clear and so sharp and really go really well, you know, as long as you've jetted them right. But that was another thing, you'd have to jet them just before you were setting off. So it wasn't a 2-minute thing, you'd be there 15, 20 minutes doing it as fast as you could. So
would you be guessing, sorry to get a bit technical, would you be guessing the jetting? So for anybody that doesn't understand a 2-stroke, the jet is basically how much fuel gets put through the carb, right?
That's right.
And obviously the bigger the jet,
impressed.
the bigger the jet, the more fuel that gets through.
Yeah.
So what you're trying to look for, the correct mixture of fuel and air.
And air,
right.
yeah. So if it's too weak, it's not getting enough fuel, then it becomes too hot, and then the piston will seize in the bore.
But this is just a guessing game at this point, or not?
It is to a point. You've obviously done your homework and stuff in riding the bikes everywhere else, so you knew roughly. You'd arrive there at the TT, and you'd basically put the jets so you'd be on the rich side to go out, just so you get your laps in. The bike not go the best, and you have to change down 3 times going up the mountain mile compared to, and then back again and up again and down again. So, and that would be the difference in it being a quick bike or whatever, but it would get you the laps in. But other people would arrive and they'd just try and run it like a short circuit, and you only get like a half a lap in, and it'd be seized solid. You'd be stood on the side of the road, you wouldn't get any laps in. So it's things like that you try and to try and think ahead for, to try and get the laps, even though they're not the best laps. You know that the bike will keep going at that sort of jet, and then you sort of come down with the jets but you look at the weather as well. As it becomes more humid, then you can come down with the jet, or if it goes the opposite direction on the air pressure. So everything works against you. You've got the air pressure, humidity, and your temperature of the ambient temperature.
Yeah.
So there's 3 things that you're sort of working out.
It's a proper science, isn't it?
That's a lot of thinking to do at 4:45 in the morning.
Well, that's it. And I guess, it'll change instantly between 4:40 in the morning, and then race time. If race time 3:00 in the afternoon,
Yeah.
you're guessing at.
Yeah.
Which opens it up to other people to.
So what
to
about
win a
that?
race.
Of course, when I was coming through the ranks, you were one of the main men on two strokes racing at British Championship as well as the roads. 125, 250, and so on. No two strokes anymore. It's all four strokes. Fuel injection now. It's massively different from when you first started.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and I got to say, I'm really sad about it. As a lot of other people are. I think the two-stroke thing, they carried on. They shouldn't have got rid of the 250 British Championship in 2001. I think was the last one, because they carry on with the 250s in the Grand Prix until 2009. And by this stage, they've tried to keep the two strokes going on the road circuits, on the smaller road circuits, and the TT from until 2004. I think was the last 125 TT. But they jumped ship too early. I think Italy stopped doing a 250 championship. I think they thought, we'll get out of it and it'll all be great. But then there were a lot of people with bikes that became stagnant. They didn't know where to sell them because they'd be pieces of junk that weren't worth anything, which is not the case now, obviously, and not being up. But some people were riding them, some people weren't, and it's real sad, because it's the death of the two-stroke. It's terrible, and it was only the Suter a couple of years ago. I rode for Suter, brought the 500 back, and I rode that for 2 years, 2016, 2018. That was fuel injected 500. But that was.
So how was while we're on that subject? How was that to ride around?
Hard work.
Yeah. Because it was fuel injected, or just because it was a 500?
Yeah, well,
two-stroke?
500 two-strokes hard anyway, but it was hard work because the fueling wasn't quite correct in the beginning. So, for instance, and I didn't realise when I first rode it, I thought it was great and whatever. But the Alaman throws up all different things than any other circuit because you're on the throttle for so long, maybe half a minute. Some places, before you shut the throttle, you never do that.
Yeah.
And the short circuit, you're always,
yeah.
Anyway, for instance, with the Suter, we and the guys worked on. They were fantastic people to work with, and we're still friends. And it's just mega people and engineers, but. You for one instance, you go up the mountain mile, absolutely flat out. You get to the end of the mountain mile, and it'll be back 2 gears or 3 gears, and you go into the corner, you open the throttle, nothing happening, and you're falling into the wall.
Oh, really?
And then all of a sudden it chimes in just before you hit the wall with your shoulder. And then it wheelies on the way out. So I could handle the wheeling, but the uncertainty was not so good.
What was that down to?
Just them getting the fueling right.
Right.
Coming back too many gears.
Yeah, that's right. It's only come back 2 instead of 3. Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but they got that sorted. Within a. But it took 2 or 3 nights to do that. So I was have to think it, and every time you did it, you have to sort of think, right, one, open it now.
Yeah, way earlier than you normally would.
Anticipate.
Anticipated, yeah.
Yeah, that's terrifying. So let's go all the way back to the start then. Like, how did you actually get into road racing itself?
Well, I was a 16-year-old riding FS1Es and AP50 Suzukis on the road, and I eventually moved up to a 250 in those days, and I got banned and police chasing me and things like this. I was crazy, really. Yeah.
Did they catch you?
A couple of times. That was the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
I knew there was a problem there somewhere. But I was just a bit young and a bit stupid and whatever, in with the wrong people maybe. But and then one day I went to a friend of mine went to a circuit in South Wales near Llantwit Major called Llandau, and went to there, and he said, "Oh, do you fancy to go to this?" And I said, "What?" sort of thing. He said, "No, racing." I said, "Oh, I haven't even thought about it." And anyway, so he said, "There's a guy that goes up the pub tonight. He does a bit of racing," and so I had a chat with him. He said, "I'll lend you some leathers," but I'll never forget what he said. He said, "I'll give you the address of the ACU to get your license," but he said, "I'll tell you now," he said, "it's like a bug. You won't get rid of it once you start." And he was correct.
Oh, yeah.
So 40 years later, here I am.
Still doing
it was 40 years in that beginning of 82 I started racing.
Did that take you off of the road then? Did you stop being a loon on the road?
Yeah, I to be honest, even though I was a loon on the road, I was still, even then I was quite anticipating things. You know, I wouldn't, like I had friends
wasn't
who
brainless.
But I wasn't brainless, no. I had friends who would overtake on blind corners. I'd be like, oh, why don't you just look over the top of the car and wait? And I could anticipate things. You know what I mean? I wasn't, even though I was nuts with the police, I wasn't, you know.
It's a different story when they
they didn't like me much,
you.
But...
there was a certain amount of self-preservation.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. I've always had that, I think. Thank God.
Yeah.
So was your first race at Landau?
My first race was actually supposed to be at Castle Combe. So that area was North Gloucester club. Because in those days, there was lots of clubs, you know, you could go to. These days, there's not so many clubs because of the introduction of track days, etc., which is a sad thing, I think. But anyway, so I was part of the North Gloucester. So I went to North Gloucester, and I had a friend of mine. I was a tractor mechanic at the time. So we put my RD 400 Yamaha two-stroke on the back of his pickup, the yellow pickup it was, and we tied it on with baler twine, and off we went to Castle Combe, which is about a couple of hours away, and got there and signed on and did all that, and then I remember going to the out in practice, and I was 3rd or 4th reserve, so naive. I just waited at the yellow pickup all day, waiting for them to come to the yellow pickup and tell me you're a reserve, you can go on, you know, there's enough room on track, sort of thing. I didn't get a ride, funnily enough, so I didn't actually, you know, I paid my entry, I didn't get the race. Cool. So just that, silly. So and then a couple of weeks later there was Landau, and that was my first actual race.
How did you get on in it?
Good, yeah. I think I had a 10th and a 4th. Which was good. Yeah, it was okay, you know, and in a class where maybe I was up against 750, TZ 750s or something, or 500 Yamahas, you know, and I was on a 400 RD 400, which was probably not the best thing to have at the time.
Yeah.
But I purposely chose that because I didn't have any money anyway. Never had enough money. It's a motorcycle race, you never have enough money. But I purposely chose it because I wanted to see how I could get on in the production class against the RD 350 LC, which was the thing to have.
Yeah,
and they weren't as quick as them. So I thought, if I can finish halfway up through the grid against them and others LCs behind me, then I'll be doing all right. Yeah. And that's what happened. So I finished, I think there was a grid at one time, 38, and I finished 18th. And then I finished 12th one time. And I thought, I must be all right.
Yeah.
So that was the idea behind it, really. Not that I could afford an LC anyway, but...
Yeah. And the bug had set in, and that was it.
Yeah, the following year I got a TZ 350 and had that for. It was an old bike, a 2-3-year-old bike, and in those days you had to sort of weld the frame up in the middle of the meeting. Nice. Because it was they were cracking through, like, you know. It was a common thing. The first thing you do when you arrive there, I'm not being derogatory to the sidecar paddock, you know, but you look for the sidecars. They always had oxyacetylene with them, so they could weld your frame back up in the middle of the meeting. That's just the way it was, you know.
And how your parents and things, the family, when you wanted to start racing, were they happy to see you getting off your road bike and getting rid of your adrenaline on circuit, or were they negative?
They didn't know he was doing what he was doing out on the roads, surely.
Well, actually, there is a story behind this as well. They weren't actually against it, no, and they helped me as much as they could, but my dad had bikes on the road, and my brother had bikes on the road. He used to take me on the back of him when he had a Z900. When I was about 12, he used to take me on the back. I was on the back of him and going around and stuff. So we always had bikes they were never racing, you know, there was never a racing thing there. But the first thing was, I pinched my brother's bike. He had a Z900. But in the wintertime, he used to have a YB100 Yamaha. And we lived out in the sticks. So the roads were only as wide as this table. And I used to nick the bike, push it down the road so my mum couldn't hear me. She'd kill me otherwise. And no helmet or anything. And then me and my mate used to go down the road, a couple hundred yards down the road, and just ride it. And, you know, just fairly crazy when I think about it. But anyway, no gloves, nothing, just... and then turn, but you could see over the hedges, so it wasn't too bad. To see anything
Don't try and justify it.
And anyway, he used to turn around, come back, and he'd jump on. And this one time, I'm coming back, and I pulls up, and the next minute, there was a copper following me. Sure. So he caught me, and he was in a minivan.
Brilliant.
And he gets me, and he was a notorious copper at the time that hated anybody young, I think. And anyway, we went to court, so I got banned when I was 13.
Oh, really?
So I had to wait 3
13.
years in those days to get you, because you had so many, no helmet, taking the bike without no permission, no insurance. So they threw the book at me, sort of thing. And I had to wait until I was 16 and a half to get my FS1E on the road, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe a couple of months anyway.
Hold on.
Which
so that,
was killing me. I couldn't,
yeah, wait, so that ban started from the age of 13, even though you knew you couldn't get your license?
Even though you didn't have a license till you're 16.
Brilliant.
Because I had so many. When I got my license, I already had 4 endorsements on it. You're only allowed to have 3 in those days.
That's right. Yeah.
So I had to wait for a couple of months to. So I was livid the time I got on the road.
Brilliant. So it was payback. So you just literally went out and tried to cause as much havoc as you could.
Yeah, I think so. But it was all good fun.
So you were going down the route of circuit racing at this point as well.
Yeah.
Were you looking at the roads at all?
No, I didn't even know where the Isle of Man was.
It didn't exist in your
No. I was
vocab.
in Wales. It's all about rugby, and
Yeah.
nobody's interested in bikes really, except for a guy called Ray Cowles, and he was from Pontypool, 30 odd miles away from me, and there was a guy called Clive Watts who used to race and won the Manx Grand Prix in 1979, and he helped me in the beginning. He introduced me to Ray Cowles, and said that he'd give me a bike to go along with my bike. So we'd have a 350 and we'd have a 352 or 354. We used to call it in those days. They were just a 350. Put it into the 500 class, give it an extra ride. So we used to travel in a little van together and go around all these meetings. I used to do 26 meetings a year, in those days.
Really?
Yeah, it was crazy. How I afforded it, I just don't know, because it was crackers. So that was the introduction really to with Raymond, and then he mentioned going to the roads, and I just wanted to be Barry Sheen, in my mind. I was like, Barry Sheen, that's what I want, And Ray said about going to the roads, and I said, whatever, it's racing, And went to the Southern 100, and we did that. And while we were there, we drove up the road to the circuit here and to Douglas, and did a couple of laps in the van. And he said, "What do you think?" I said, "It's all right." It was just like that, when you're 20, I think it was.
So you come off a circuit which is relatively safe back in the day, relatively safe.
Yeah,
right?
relatively safe. Yeah.
But then you rock up to the Southern 100. You've got signposts, you've got brick walls, you've got gardens.
Yeah.
Did it not bother you because of the way you were on the road before? Do you think?
I think so. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
I think because I've been used to travelling, around the little roads,
He'd been used to stealing his brother's bike, riding with no
13.
gloves, no helmet. What do you think?
Walking, stupid question, really, isn't it?
And no, I didn't have to steal anything.
You're getting bikes given to you.
No, but I think, generally, riding around the lanes at home, they're quite narrow.
Yeah.
And I think you have to be very accurate.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what it was. I was used to walls and whatever.
Because it's not like it is nowadays. If someone says, "Do you want to go and do the Southern 100?" You can go online, look at YouTube, look at the course, actually work out what's going on. Someone just says, "Do you want to go on roads?"
Yeah.
You have no idea what you're kind of getting yourself
absolutely.
into. But
No,
you took to it relatively.
Yeah, and I think you've
well.
got to have good memory as well. And I've got terrible memory for names and things, but like as far as going somewhere in the roads and stuff.
Yeah.
I can sort of remember, I think, once I've been there once, generally, you think, it's done. Sort of, you have to have that about you, I think, in those days as well. Because you've got, as you say, you've got nothing to look at, there's no internet or anything.
Yeah, it wasn't daunting going from the Southern 100, a couple of miles long, to then coming up to Douglas, doing a lap of the course. Like all that course you've now got to try and remember.
Yeah,
you didn't think
it wasn't really
too much.
It didn't bother me too much. But when I went home, I used to work as a tractor mechanic in the beginning, and then building sites and whatever with my dad and my brother. And then at night time I used to go down and help Clive Watts, who was the guy who won the Manx, and he'd lent me some leathers and which were like paper in those days. They were just like they were so light. There was just an extra bit of leather around your knees or your elbows.
That was it.
Not much when we hurt ourselves and we fell off. It's just.
I borrowed some to do parades and things. Flipping heck, how people are brave enough to.
Yeah.
You get more protection from a flipping tracksuit these days.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, honestly, it's unbelievable. Yeah, that's one thing that's come on is the clothing, the airbags these days, and all that stuff. But But yeah, no, he lent me some leathers, and I used to go down because he helped me with a van first of all. And he said, there's the van. It was all like a rotted 1974 High Ace.
Yeah.
And this was 1982.
This is straight over my head.
Yeah. Toyota, sorry, yeah. And anyway, so we had to rub that down and spray it and everything, and he was particular. It had to be just right, so I was there for months doing that, and then we had to do the engine after that. Cool. And that's what it was. And then we carried on doing that, and he has to rub his cars down. This was after work, mind. So he'd help me. So in those days, I was a bit crazy, as in, I wasn't crazy. I was fairly good, I think, when looking back on the short circuit wise. But club races, we go to Snet, and 6.5 hours drives from Wales after work, and through London. Then there was no M25 one finished.
Straight through the middle of London.
Yeah,
and we like this one. You wake up in the morning, you have 2 hours sleep, and then drive all the way home, and then drive the next weekend back to Snetton. Yeah, it was crazy. And then it crashed. So I used to crash. Because I was fairly like in the top 3, I'd crash, I suppose I was a bit wild. And anyway, I'd come back and we'd say, bike's a bit of a mess. Right. Look on the shelf he used to and go, right, what colour's the bike this week then? So it used to be blue and green or white and red and
whatever was in there.
There's some black there. I'll have black bike this week. It was quite interesting. There was no corporate stuff in those days, leathers taped up and stuff.
Did you go straight back to the TT after you'd done that the first time at the Southern 100, done your lap? Did you go back to the TT the following year to race it?
Yeah, once I'd done those couple of laps in 83, then obviously I went back to the Manx then, which was in the September, and I finished third in the newcomers race, which was behind Robert Dunlop won it, Steve Islop second, and I was third.
I mean, that's a year and a half in it for newcomers.
Yeah,
not bad, is it?
No, and there was also Keith Nichols, I think, was fourth, who turned out to be a really brilliant rider from Preston. G. McDonnell, who was tragically killed he hit the horse at the TT. Yeah, he was fifth. Ian Newton. There was a load of people that year. It's just one of those years, where it's just
that's a name from the past, old Ian Newton, isn't it?
Yeah,
he used to do the RS 250 Cup, didn't he? The
good 250 rider. And did some Grand Prix, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Now he's in charge at Aprilia UK.
Yeah. So what was a newcomers race like? Because obviously we don't have that anymore. was it as wild as it sounds? Because I was only speaking to some of the guys about it last night. A newcomers race is quite a daunting thing. You're brand new to the TT. I guess you would have had pit boards back then, right? Giving you an idea of where you were. Yeah.
Boards,
but you'd know your positions and time differences. As a newcomer coming, you see like P2, plus 1 or plus 2 seconds. What kind of a mindset for a newcomer does that give? Like, as a newcomer, you want to come here and learn the circuit. You don't want to be fighting for wins, do you? So was it a bit wild, or was it?
I know. I think you want to be fighting for wins because you're up against other newcomers.
Yeah,
that's my mind. If it's a race, it's a race.
So you're looking at it. It's different for me because he was in a race with the pros.
Yeah.
When I came, I said to them, I don't want pit boards. The only board I would like is fuel.
Yeah,
and that's it. Just because I didn't want a carrot dangling like you're implying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
obviously. With those races, it was all newcomers.
It was all newcomers, and it wasn't like the TT; it was the Manx anyway. Yeah. So you say more sort of not professionals.
Yeah.
With the TT was more people who are already gone, because everybody in those days used to do the Manx and then the TT.
Step up to it, yeah.
Nobody just goes straight to the TT. It was only later on in years.
I believe is that right? If you won the Manx, you weren't allowed to go back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think that's still the case. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they've altered that a few years ago. But yeah, and the Manx Grand Prix at one time was like getting a works ride. You could get a works ride at the TT if you won the Manx.
If you won the Manx, yeah.
It was thought of that highly, and there were some really, really good riders who went, I don't know if Halewood went through their Manx first, mind. But people like that,
So when you did your first Southern, and then went and had a look round the TT, who were the main men at Southern then? Who was doing the winning on the proper
I think it would have been people like Kenny Harrison, and Dave Leach,
flipping heck,
and Yeah, maybe that was a bit before Dave's time, maybe. But Buddy Yeardsley, those sort of names. Brian Reid. Brian Reid would probably be, Speedy Reedy would have been the top man then. Yeah, 80. I remember being there in 83 and he'd just done the first 100 mile an hour lap. When it was my first
good rider.
My first race there then, and now we live about 2 miles apart from each other, and it was weird, we didn't know each other then. Yeah, it's weird, in Northern Ireland. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So then you come back the following year and you're at the TT. You step up to the TT.
No, so that was 83, I did that. Then 84, I came back in the TT. But I was going to do the Manx again, 84, because Raymond wanted me to do it. If it had been me, I'd just gone straight to the TT. Because I thought, Manx, I wanted to get there, it's like, and I think I went from being like a novice license holder to international within 18 months. So I wanted to do it, sort of thing, Anyway, so I came back to the TT in 84. You were allowed to do, there was a historic race, it was called. It was a 2-lapper. And historic race, it was two, there was that, and then also the production race. So you're allowed to do that and then still go back to the Manx Grand Prix. So anyway, I was there and I went out. I'd never ridden a 4-stroke before. I was 20, and only my second time there at the Isle of Man. Right-hand gear change. Never ridden a 4-stroke, and it was damp.
Why was it a right-hand gear change?
Because it's a G50, matchless G50, so it's it's very hard to put one on the other side, So anyway, I finished second to Dave Roper. It was big beard, massive big beard. It was a good ride, really. And then while I was there, I was staying in the same place as a rider called Steve Tonkin, who was a 250 British champion and etc. and very good TT rider, TT winner. And he fell off and broke his leg. And they said, "Do you want to take over his production ride? Because I could ride in the production race." I said, "Yeah, okay." So I started first on the road with Mez Mellor.
Cool,
so it went off in twos, And we were like this. Great, when we were laughing, we'd pull each other's seats back and everything going along, trying to turn the ignition off and stuff. All the way to Palau. And it was great crack. And got there and he left me a little bit. And I thought, no. Anyway, so it was a 3-lap race. So he pulls in for fuel at the end of the first lap. I was going to pull in the end of the second lap. So then I'm going down to Parliament Square. I'm leading the race. I didn't know this. So I'm leading the race. It was a really hot day. Got to Parliament Square, lost the front on the tar. The tar was melting. So I picked it up. You were allowed to pick it up in those days. There was only the screen broken. So I got back going, the screen broke. And I finished 7th. So I had a really good ride, yeah.
Oh, man,
yeah. And then I went back to the Manx Grand Prix in September. And I broke my collarbone the night before the first race. Yeah, the bike seized at 250 at the end of the mile, just where we were talking about, actually. It came through there, and it used to be so rough through there. Your hands were you're on the clutch like this. You're trying to grab the clutch, and just in case it seizes, and just as you shut off, you think no, but you couldn't because your hands were that busy with it. Was that bouncy and rough the road. And then I just took my hand back off to go into the corner, and then it seized. I couldn't get my hand back onto the clutch, and just spat me straight through the screen. I broke my collarbone. I ended up with some bit of gangrene in my side here, so bit of gravel rash. Nice. Not very nice. We've all been there.
That's so fast there.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
Right, let's end part 1 here, because I want to get on to your first win, and then talking all about being a team manager now and what it feels like. Ian Lougher, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.